What's up everybody, I'm Josh Elkin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making a French onion beef dip pizza. Let's get on with the recipe. Before getting on the long process of braising this beef and actually making the contents to go on top of the pizza, first I have to start making the actual pizza dough. Now here's the deal, I'm not an official pizza maker, obviously, so this dough is super basic. If you have a better recipe using different flour or different types of yeast, then go ahead and use it. If you want a really easy pizza dough recipe, and in my experience, the path of least resistance kind of pizza dough recipe, then follow this. 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a cup and a half of warm water, a pack of active dry yeast, a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of olive oil. Now, my recommendation for making this sort of pizza is to use a square sheet pan. I'm using a Lloyd pan, which you can buy if you follow the link in the description to my Amazon store. But the pizza dough is just the base, and this pizza is just the vessel for what the star of the show is, the braised beef. Now, the key to braising beef and cooking meat in general is to letting it come to room temperature. If it's cold, it's gonna seize up and you're not gonna be able to cook it evenly. And I'm heavily seasoning this bad boy with salt and pepper. Just salt and pepper, because there's a lot of flavor that's going into the braising liquid and we don't need to overcrowd it with more flavor to the beef. The trick to doing this is searing all the sides. It's gonna lock in the flavor and create a beautiful crust. Now, what's left over in the pan after searing the beef? A lot of flavor, or a lot of fond, which means flavor. And all that flavor is gonna get cooked into the onions. So we're gonna leave it on medium-high and add the onions and saute them. Then add a little bit of the garlic and the rosemary sprigs. I'm not trying to fully cook the contents of this pan. I'm just trying to release the flavor and saute them because ultimately I'm putting them in the Instapot to cook with the beef. Now, maybe you don't have an Instapot or a pressure cooker, and that's okay. You could essentially just cook this in a pot, except it's gonna take a lot longer. And the moral of that story is invest in an Instapot or a pressure cooker. Okay, now we're in the long haul. To this pressure cooker, I have the onions, I have the rosemary, I have the garlic. Now I'm gonna add the braising liquid, and in order to get the most out of it, I'm using beef stock. And the key here is to cover the meat completely. So if you need to use more than the recipe requires, go for it. I'm also adding some Worcestershire sauce and soy sauce to fortify the flavor and increase that umami. Now, while that beef braises, I'm gonna get on shredding this cheese, and the first cheese I'm gonna use is a little bit of Gouda. You could also use smoked Gouda if you like that stuff. The key is to use the Gouda because Gouda is really good at melting, but it's not the only cheese we're gonna use. Oh no. There's another cheese that's going on top of this bad boy, and that's provolone. As the beef is almost done cooking, it's time to spread out the pizza dough. And when I'm using this Lloyd pan, you wanna hit the bottom with olive oil so that it cooks and crisps at the bottom. Now back to the beef and the braising liquid. Carefully take the beef out and let it sit. While that happens, I wanna strain the liquid from the onions. When the beef is kind of cooled, you want to rip it apart using a fork or 2 forks, or if it's cool enough, your hands. And now after all that, it's time to build this pizza. On top of the dough, I'm going to add an even layer of the shredded Gouda. On top of the Gouda, I'm going to add an even layer of the braised onions. And as you can see, it looks so good. Little bits of rosemary inside there, and you could leave all that. The key is, though, to take out the stems of the rosemary, so don't forget that part. Now the pièce de résistance, an even layer of that shredded beef. Now you could use as much shredded beef as you want. Personally, I like covering the top just enough and keeping the rest for leftovers. You know, to make like a braised beef breakfast hash or a braised beef breakfast burrito. You get the idea. On top of the braised beef, add an even layer of the provolone and then pop it in the oven for like 15 minutes. In the interim, heat up the broth. Take the pizza out of the oven, hit it with a little bit of parsley garnish. Originally, when I thought of making this recipe, I wanted to make a circular pie. Then I realized I had a Detroit-style pizza pan, and this would lend itself really well to a square pie. Now, this pizza on its own is a flavor explosion. But when you introduce the beef dip element, it changes the game completely. Yeah. So good. This thing is incredible. It's so easy, and it could be yours by just following the link down below or hitting up recipechampions.com. It's my website that I publish a recipe on every single week. I'm very excited to eat the rest of this pizza. Bye.